That day, Seiya held a meeting with the employees, where he proposed the idea of having a football match at the amusement park. This suggestion certainly surprised everyone. Malful even asked if Seiya had lost his mind. Seiya explained a few reasons why he proposed football. The stadium in the south could be used for a football match, and it was the only way to attract around 100,000 people over the course of 10 days. Ashley then asked if Seiya was planning to host a professional match at the venue. Seiya confirmed this, explaining that the stadium had a capacity of 50,000 and that it was a great opportunity to boost the attendance numbers. Isuzu pointed out that based on the current attendance graph, it would be impossible to reach 500,000 visitors by July 31st, but by adding football fans, the number could significantly increase. Toriken mentioned that Seiya had instructed him earlier to gather information. Toriken had contacted several parties and traveled all over Japan. Hearing Toriken's complicated explanation, Isuzu immediately pointed her weapon at him, demanding he get to the point. Seiya explained that, in short, he had been searching for events that could utilize the stadium. Malful was surprised he hadn't heard of this earlier, but Seiya explained that he didn't want them to get their hopes up too soon. Toriken then shared that he had received news from a friend the previous night. The stadium owned by the Division 1 League club Grandilla Tokyo was undergoing repairs due to its poor condition. Because of the delays, the stadium wouldn't be available for the club's anniversary match on July 31st. The anniversary match was an annual event where current and former players faced off, drawing nearly 50,000 spectators. Seiya added that the club was looking for a replacement stadium, and he intended to offer theirs. Genjuro then asked if only licensed stadiums could hold professional matches. Isuzu clarified that it wasn't an official match, but they would still need to get permission. Seiya assured them that he would attend the meeting, and if they accepted, they would all be busy. The most important part was that the employees would be prepared. Afterwards, Seiya, Isuzu, and Toriken headed to the meeting for the stadium offer. During the trip, Toriken asked if Seiya was sure about choosing him to represent Amagi Brilliant Park. Seiya explained that the other party would likely look down on him and Isuzu because they were still in high school. Seiya then asked if Toriken had brought the charm, to which Toriken confirmed, making sure its true form remained a secret. Isuzu asked Seiya about the real chances they had, but Seiya admitted he didn't know. They finally arrived at the meeting room, where the other party read through their proposal for the stadium. Toriken asked for their opinion and mentioned that the Amagi Brilliant Park Stadium had a capacity exceeding the required minimum. The other party asked how long the stadium had been built, and Toriken replied that it had been about 20 years. They questioned whether the stadium was well maintained given that it appeared rarely used, and they also mentioned that the pedestrian access from the station seemed quite far. They then asked if the stadium could really accommodate 50,000 people. Toriken hesitated but assured them he would do his best. The other party pointed out the issue with the pitch, as football required a well-maintained grassy field. Toriken looked increasingly confused. They then inquired how they would manage the upkeep of such a multipurpose stadium. Toriken responded, explaining that he was the head of sales and didn't know the details. The other party thanked him and said they would contact them with an official letter in a few days, indicating that they weren't interested. Toriken tried to convince them to look at other documents, even going as far as begging. Seeing this, Seiya immediately stepped in to answer the questions that Toriken hadn't addressed. First, regarding maintenance, Seiya explained that the park staff regularly watered the stadium to keep it in good condition, and he assured them that if a match were to take place the following day, the stadium would be ready to use. Regarding the access, Seiya planned to ask the local bus company to provide shuttle services from the station. On top of that, Amagi Brilliant Park had 5,000 parking spaces. For the field maintenance, Seiya confirmed that he had an expert in the field. The field had natural grass that was perfectly maintained, so there was no need to worry. Seiya even offered for them to take a look at it in person to ease their concerns. The club representatives said that despite that, they were still hesitant to trust a venue with no prior experience hosting matches. Seiya then used his power to read the club's thoughts and discovered that they were facing a financial crisis, which was causing the delay in the field's construction. Seiya then offered to waive the stadium rental fees. He was even willing to fund the bus rentals, stadium security, advertising, ticket printing, brochures, and other reasonable expenses. The club representatives were shocked that Seiya was willing to cover all of these costs. Seiya said that Amagi Brilliant Park was willing to sponsor the event. Toriken whispered, asking if Seiya was sure about offering all of this. The club representatives then asked how much Seiya was proposing. Seiya showed them the cost breakdown, and the club representatives were surprised, wondering if the calculations were correct. Seiya assured them that there was no mistake, as it was a directive from their director. The club representatives said that while the offer was very beneficial for them, it would mean a significant loss of revenue for the stadium. Saya responded that the director's main goal was to attract a large number of visitors, and they had to welcome football fans even if their profits were reduced. Saya also requested that all attendees of the match must pass through the park's entrance gate, and of course, ticket holders would not have to pay an additional fee. Saya then asked if the club representatives wanted to inspect the stadium and the field first. On their way back, Torkin asked Saya if he was sure about offering everything for free, even though they didn't have the funds. Saya said that he had thought about it and assured Torkin not to worry. Torkin then asked what Saya meant by having a field expert. Saya explained that Amayi Brilliant Park had staff who were experts, including professional botanists. Tarami, Macaron, and Mawful were in charge of growing the grass on the field, but suddenly dangerous plants started growing and attacked them. Fortunately, Saya and Isuzu saw it happening. Saya then gave the signal for the clan of diggers to attack the monster plants, and the mission was completed successfully. That day, the club representatives came to inspect the stadium they were going to use. They checked every corner, including the quality of the building, the hallways, the food provisions, and the field. They were very pleased with the condition of the field, which was well kept, and the grass was in excellent condition. After that, Saya and the club representatives met again for a cooperation agreement. Before leaving, the club representatives praised the well-maintained field and invited Saya to work together. Both parties thanked each other before parting ways. Saya then asked Isuzu to gather all the employees on the roof of Maple Castle after closing, as it was time to share something important with them. That evening, all the employees gathered because Saya had something significant to announce. Saya told them that they would be selling the southern area, and that decision was final. He had already found a buyer who was interested, and once the deal was closed, Amayi Brilliant Park would receive a large injection of funds, solving their financial problems. The decision certainly surprised everyone, with some of them expressing hesitation because they were hoping that the amusement park would grow bigger, especially since the southern area was almost half the total size. For Saya, though, there was no such thing as the future, because before that could happen, the park would be closed, and what needed to be done right away was to survive, even if it meant eating one's own flesh. Mawful called it not a bad idea, and Macaron also mentioned that owning land that couldn't be managed wasn't important. Tirami agreed with them, and so did Ashe, because it seemed like the perfect solution to their financial problems. The fairies also agreed, as the most important thing was that the park would continue running, and the employees would still work together. Sophie even said that sometimes sacrifices had to be made in battle in order to win the war. In the end, everyone agreed with the decision, and there were only 9 days left until July 31st. Meanwhile, Latifa was just listening from her room due to her health condition at that time. Saya mentioned that there were many things they had to do, and if needed, it wouldn't need to go home starting from that day. Everyone was fired up and ready to work hard. That night, everyone worked together, from fixing the stadium, putting up billboards, contacting clients, preparing new menu items, cleaning the stadium, technical work, budget planning, creating advertisements for the match, making tickets and brochures, distributing brochures, to arranging the spectator seating. Everyone worked so hard they were exhausted. The next day, Saya visited Latifa's room to check on her. Latifa asked how the preparations were going. Saya said it was troublesome, but all the employees had managed to handle it. Latifa was happy to hear that. Saya apologized to her about the decision to sell part of the property, saying that even though he had told her in advance, it was still an uncomfortable thing for her. Latifa asked why Saya was bringing it up again, since he was the manager of the park and everyone had to follow his orders. She also asked if there was anything she could do to help. She felt bad for not doing anything while all the employees were working so hard. Saya told her not to worry and that her job at that moment was to rest as much as possible. Latifa was about to argue, but Saya immediately told her that she had to follow the manager's orders. Latifa just smiled. Saya was confident that his touch would turn the park into gold. Then he suddenly remembered that starting in August, Latifa's memories would fade even if the park succeeded. Latifa asked him not to worry about it, as it happened every year. This was the way her life was. Every year, on the dot at midnight on August 1st, both her memories and her body would reset to the way they were the previous year. Last year, Mawful had explained everything, why Latifa was in the park, what had happened up until that point. Latifa had actually met Rubrum and the Digger clan long ago, but she didn't remember them. As long as the park was still there, Latifa would remain in that place forever. Latifa also said that even if Saya stopped being the manager, he would have to visit the park, often because she wouldn't forget how to make croquettes. Saya then said that he wanted Latifa to treat him to croquettes again. Latifa even wanted to take Saya on the Ferris wheel, but she forgot that Saya was afraid of heights. That day, Takaya came to meet with Saya. Takaya wanted to see the visitor calculations and also mentioned that Saya and the others had been working hard. The total number of visitors had already reached 445,027, and Seiya was confident they would meet their target. Takaya wanted to clarify that the deadline stated in the contract was exactly at 9 p.m. on the last day, with no extensions. Seiya replied that the soccer match would start at 6 p.m., and there was nothing to worry about. Takaya mentioned that he would send someone to the park at 9 p.m. that evening. Before leaving, Takaya said he couldn't wait to see how it would go. All the employees worked together to prepare for the match event, from practicing the attractions, rehearsing performances, preparing food, and many other tasks. Finally, the day arrived. The gates opened, and the show began. Visitors eagerly flooded into the Amai Brilliant Park entrance, where they were treated to a performance by Malfo playing with small balls, Tirami performing flower magic, Macaron playing music, Wannabe and Mirai handing out balloons to children, and Dornell posing for photos with visitors. The fairies performed a dance show in the elementary area. Okura was busy directing vehicles for parking, while Seiya and Isuzu monitored the number of visitors. Isuzu commented on how many people had arrived, but Seiya was confident even more would come. Every ride appeared to have long lines, and Toriken was in charge of managing the queues at the attractions. Tirami was so tired from entertaining visitors on the train multiple times, just as Macaron had performed countless times in the theater. Malfo was overwhelmed guiding visitors to shoot at enemy mice. The pirate performance was just as packed, causing long lines. Bieno and Sheena even lost track of the orders because there were so many. From the kitchen, Nika shouted that their stand had run out of meat. He told them to buy 100 kilograms of meat at a nearby station, and they screamed in surprise. Wannabe was struggling to handle the many children who had gotten separated from their parents. That afternoon, all the employees were exhausted. They had never seen such a large crowd outside of Area 8 before. Tirami was so tired she couldn't move and hoped someone would give her a massage. Malfo mentioned that more people would come, and their battle was just beginning. Suddenly, the information center announced that there would be an additional show soon and asked the performers to be on standby. That afternoon, many buses brought visitors for the soccer match. They walked past the amusement park. Malfo was deeply moved by how many people had come and hoped that one day he could entertain that many people. Seiya and Isuzu continued to monitor the visitor count until the last group arrived. Seiya was shocked and immediately looked outside. All the guests had gathered at the stadium, and the parking lot was empty. It was 6 p.m., and the soccer match started, but the number of guests was still not enough. They needed 252 more people to meet their target, and there were only 3 hours left.